Hey everyone, Anthony Ramos from GLAAD here. I'm so excited to be talking to the members of one of my favorite new bands. I'm obsessed with the new album, which you all will hear soon. Under My Influence comes out July 17th. The Aces, hello, how are you?
Hi. We're doing good.
We're good. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so we've got LA and Utah, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, happy Pride. I know it's kind of a interesting Pride and a different Pride this year, but happy Pride to you all.
Oh, thanks. You too. Yeah, it's definitely different than last year, but obviously important things are taking place. So, yeah.
You know, let's talk about that. You know, important things are taking place. You know, I've been following you guys on social media, and I know it's been important for you to, you know, really support and, you know, take a stand against everything that's happening with, you know, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. It does feel like we are in this moment of change. So, you know, like, how are you all, you know, reacting and kind of getting involved in this space that we're in right now?
Yeah, for us, honestly, like our album was supposed to come out this last week, and we decided to push it so we could get really, really involved. We've all been protesting a lot, basically dedicating our entire platform to just trying to repost really educational things and links and numbers to call, text, everything, and just trying to really use all of our energy into helping the movement go along and not trying to distract from that in any way.
Yeah.
How about for you two?
Like, trying to go to protests and like Ken and I went to a protest in Salt Lake that was really great. And I think we've all been really trying to like attend local protests and like just do honestly everything we can be.
Reading books, listening to podcasts, educating.
Yeah. There's just a lot, you know, that you realize, you know, you just weren't aware of. And I feel like that's been really eye-opening for me, as I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm watching these documentaries, I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm like, I'm just trying to learn as much as possible about like the history of our country and you know, police brutality and slavery and all these things that I feel like, depending on, you know, where you went to school and what teachers you got, like it really just, there's a lot that like, you know, you either were informed of or like missed depending on your education as a kid. So that's been really eye-opening for me, is just like, okay, I got to keep educating. I got to keep learning these things. Like, there's no reason to not know this. Like, this is out there. You just got to look it up. You know, like we have social media, we have Google, we have all these things. So just putting in like time every day and just dedicated to trying to listen to people, you know, particularly with this movement to Black voices and amplify them and try to just learn about what's going on in our country and what's been going on in our country for, you know, hundreds of years.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I feel like too, where I've noticed like really important work is having like hard and comfortable conversations with like family members or friends, or just talking about it and engaging in those conversations, even though it's like it can be uncomfortable. I feel like it's really important too.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about, so maybe I'll go over to Katy. You know, what was it like growing up? I mean, because, you know, I think of you all as like these like super hip rock, you know, amazing young people, like, but to grow up in, you know, somewhere like Provo, Utah, and, you know, I've done a lot of work with the Love Loud Foundation, and I know, you know, Dan Reynolds, and, you know, I've gotten a peek into a little bit of what Utah life is like, but what was it like for, you know, for you guys coming up, you know, in a place like that?
Yeah, you know, I think Utah it's diverse in the way that like a lot of kids at my elementary school were Latin, but not necessarily like diverse in other ways. But growing up, I had one friend on my soccer team who's from Jamaica, very dark skin. And she, like, I didn't realize then how difficult some things were for her that I realize now. But there were certain experiences that she had where in games, like, she would be called racial slurs all the time. And I think there's a lot to do in Utah right now to like educate ourselves on things going on, because with the lack of diversity, we really don't understand certain things. It's really important right now to dive into that and to learn and to educate ourselves and to be allies. I think they're so important.
As well as being, you know, queer growing up in Utah. Obviously, it was like a really, you know, I know for me, at least personally, it was like really challenging and really hard because that's just not, you know, like most everybody's really religious and everybody's really LDS and Mormon. And in Mormonism, you know, homosexuality is not, it's not okay. Like in a lot of religions, it's just not what you're taught is the right thing to do. And so growing up, it was just like a lot of coming to terms and like pushing away that identity and like really struggling to like finally come to terms with being gay and being queer. And then now, you know, that we are out and proud and open and putting it into our music, it's like really just trying to educate people as much as we can and just be, you know, kind of lead by what we can do by being, you know, examples of the queer community who have come from smaller communities and religious communities. And it's definitely, you know, Dan Reynolds is doing something that's fucking amazing, which is like really trying to spread awareness and educate people on, you know, the queer community.
Yeah, I think growing up in Utah is definitely almost like your classic, very conservative small town experience where if you don't fit a certain mold, it's really, really hard to have like a peaceful life. So with whether that's, you know, most people in Utah, it's a very white dominated state. There's not a lot of diversity. It's mostly white people, mostly religious people. So if you're queer and not white, it's pretty challenging. It's pretty challenging to grow up there. Yeah. But I think it's getting a lot better, especially Salt Lake City is definitely kind of a group of what most people that move to Salt Lake City are people that have broken away from the religious stigma and lifestyle that a lot of Utah people live. And there's definitely a lot of change happening in Utah, which I think is cool. But there's also a lot of like work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, I was just at a protest in Salt Lake this morning at 6 a.m. It was like super early, but it was really, the protests here feel like so inspiring because I feel like there is a lot more, you know, intersectional, there's a lot, it's a smaller amount of queer people and smaller amount of people of color, and so they have a lot of those experiences and are able to like voice them and are just barely like kind of starting to voice them. So it feels like really cathartic and emotional going to those protests and just realizing that there is like so much work to be done here. And it's kind of inspiring being here right now at this time because it feels really important.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the music because I'm very lucky that I've been able to hear the entire album, and the rest of the world will get to hear it on July 17th. But you know, speaking of Utah, okay, I gotta talk about one of my favorites. I have like 5. They're all my favorite, but I have like 5 that I'm obsessed with. 801. Let's talk about that one. Obviously, 801, a nod to where Utah. I gotta say, I every time I hear it, I kind of get like a Sublime like memory. Like I feel it's got like a little like Sublime kick to it, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that song was really. Oh, sorry. Finish your question. Sorry.
No, please tell me. I just want to hear all about it because it's a little story. It's got such a good vibe about it. I want to hear all about where that came from.
Yeah, so that song, we wrote that song in Malibu, California. And I think, honestly, our environment, like, really inspired the sound that song has. It's very beachy. It's very, like, Sublime-y, kind of, like, laid-back vibes, which is really sick and something we haven't done until now. And what it's really about, it's called 801. It's about our hometown. And the lyrics and the story is inspired by the first time we went to a queer club in Salt Lake City, which is cool. And I remember
it's like the only queer club in Salt Lake City.
It's the only one. That's where the lyric comes from. There's only one club, so we blow it up. But I mean, obviously there's more than one club, but there's only one gay club. So that's the one we go to, obviously. And it's just interesting. It was such a cool experience to like go to this like safe space within Salt Lake City and within Utah where it's like we all were grown up. We were all raised to like fit this certain mold, like what we were talking about before. And then everyone here is just like been brave enough to grow up and break out of that and to be themselves and like flourish and like have a safe space. And like I just saw so many kids I went to high school with that I'd never thought were queer or never thought I'd see out at a bar, like stuff like that. It was just such a like, I just felt like so like euphoric and like stoked that night because I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe like how many kids that I went to high school with are like here and like felt the same way I did and like are celebrating each other, even kids that are here that are just allies and like are just being homies. And it's just so cool to see how far everyone had come.
And it came from a poem Alisa wrote originally, and I remember
about that
night. And I remember we were on a plane. It was right before we moved to Los Angeles full time, and we're on a plane, and she's like, "Hey, I wrote this poem. I want to make it a song." And I like read it, and I remember being like, "Oh, this is like fucking amazing. We have to put that into a song." And so then when we were in Malibu writing, we, you know, worked with a producer named Christian Metis, who did about half the record. He's fucking amazing, really good friend of ours. And he kind of made that track. And then I just helped Alisa basically turn all those lyrics into melody. And then 801 was born. Yeah.
It's a really good one. Katy or McKenna, do you want to add anything to that? Or I have some other tracks that I'd like to discuss as well.
Yeah, I love 801 so much. It's interesting because I feel like I've had a very different experience growing up in Utah as the other three girls because I am straight and I still am like pretty involved in the religion that we grew up in. But I really relate to it in a lot of ways too, because I feel like just our generation, like we were all raised the same way, and even people who are still, you know, involved with the church or like have kept some of those standards, like I feel like everyone's doing it their own way, which I think is really cool. And I feel like I have left behind a lot of the cultural things and traditions that I've been taught and just like made it work for me in a way. So I really relate to that song in a different kind of way, but I love that song because I think it's just a really, really great representation of like our generation growing up in Utah.
I love that. Okay, Katy, I think one of your favorites is one of my favorites, Cruel.
Yes, for
Tell
sure.
me, it's so good, and I can't wait for everyone else to hear it, July 17th. But yeah, tell me why that's such a big one for you.
I love that song because I think, you know, as a band, you obviously, since you go through everything together, you know, like the intimate moments of each other's lives. And that came from a very intimate place in Cristal's life. And so to like go through the experience that she was having all together, and then to have her show us the demo of that song and just like feel the emotion that she poured into that song, I felt like I could just feel it so clearly. And I just feel like the chorus is such like a anthem. Like everyone's kind of felt that way before. Where you're like really invested in something. You're like, why do I care so much about this person that's like so toxic for me? Do you know what I mean? And I just think there's such a power in that song. And I loved also recording that song as well, because we were able to do that in Europe. And we spent time in London in the studio recording on that song, which was such a blast. And so I feel like the memories I have associated with that song are like really special, and is why it's one of my favorites for sure.
One of my favorites too. Okay, one of the tracks that is out now, in case anyone wants to listen immediately, is My Phone Is Trying to Kill Me, which I think in quarantine, like it's even more relevant now because it's so easy to literally sit in your house and be on Instagram 24 hours a day. But and also shout out to I think you guys worked with Justin Tranter on this song, right?
Yeah.
And you know, he's a good pal. He's on the board of GLAAD, which I'm so happy. So tell me about that one, because essentially, you know, just to kind of briefly set it up, it's about, you know, kind of being more present and not just being on your phone all the time and not getting sucked into scrolling and getting, you know, in the Insta craziness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Justin's amazing. Like literally one of our most favorite people we've ever worked with.
He's the best.
And we were just sitting in the studio one day and just it was the first song we ever wrote with him. And we were just trying to like figure out what we wanted to talk about, because we knew Justin's really fucking amazing at pushing you as an artist to write about and talk about things you haven't talked about before. And that's what I love about him so much, is he's like so, he's so smart, and he just wants to do stuff that's different, and he wants to do stuff that's out of the box, and he wants to push you to like a uncomfortable place where you're growing. And so I remember just being like, oh, like, you know, we were just talking about like what we were going through, and I remember like I was texting somebody that like wasn't really texting me back as quickly as I wanted them to, and I was like feeling really annoyed that I was like in my head thinking about getting a text back instead of like being present that I was fucking in a writing session with someone as amazing as Justin. Yeah. And I was like really beating myself up internally during that session. Yeah. So I just started talking about that. Like we started talking about how social media is its own world and it's really not a reflection of reality. Mm-hmm. And how, you know, you have things happening like, you know, there's a whole series with MTV called Catfish where people are using like, you know, completely making up these alternate personalities. And I mean, that's to the extreme, but I just think, you know, there's been so many times in my life where like either friends or people I've been dating, you know, like from social media, they look like they're doing amazing. And then I actually talk to them and they're not doing amazing and they're really struggling and they're not happy and all these things. Yeah. So we're like, this generation, that's something that everybody's going through. We should talk about that.
Yeah, we all kind of just started opening up about like our personal relationships to like social media and like what Cristal was going through specifically, where like she wasn't like getting the time of day from the girl she was texting. So like it was like so annoying to like when you text someone, it's so annoying to see they're like posting on Instagram. It's like weird that we can like keep tabs on each other like, in a way and like
track each other.
That, like,
it's really weird.
You're not getting a text that you're getting ignored, basically, is what you can like see is what's happening. And so we all started like talking about like, oh, how do you feel about social media and how do you feel about that? And we were just talking about it. And then Justin was like, we should make this a song probably. And we're like, oh, but we don't really ever talk. We've tried to talk about social media and phones in the past, and it always just comes off corny, like, you know. And he's like, well, let's just like probably make it cool then. And it just kind of worked.
Yeah.
I can just see him saying that. Katy and McKenna, I think, you know, the big theme of this conversation with this song is social media. I mean, it's, you know, there's power with it, but there's danger with it. How do you navigate it? Because, you know, it's not easy, especially if you're young these days.
Yeah, it's seriously such a crazy alternate. And I feel like I'm noticing more now than ever, though, like how it can be so powerful. Like this Black Lives Matter movement has been like such a thing on social media, and it's something you can't stop thinking about. And I think it's really important in a lot of ways for our generation to utilize it for things like that. And I think it's amazing that our generation is using social media to make these changes. With that being said, I think it is so important to just, you know, keep reality, like just always be thinking of like how things could be being portrayed differently, and being careful what media that you consume, and just making sure you're keeping that in mind, I think is important.
Totally. I think it's interesting going from COVID and all of us being quarantined and then going into this Black Lives Matters movement. It's so interesting because we've been so involved in social media for like the last 4 or 5 months, and seeing, like what Kenna was saying, seeing the good it can do, which I think has been so powerful. And I think social media can be used in a good way, but there's also times when it literally feels like your phone is completely out to get you.
Absolutely. Now we got to talk about Kelly, the song, which is also available now for streaming purposes. Big song. We are using pronouns. We're very excited about this. Tell me about this song, because it's beyond the message. It's such a great song just in general, but I would love to hear just kind of, you know, why you wanted to, you know, kind of release a song like that.
Yeah, Kelly came about really organic. Sorry, our cat's literally on the table. We're gonna have to shoo her away. So it's like she knows we're, you know, in the middle of an interview, and she just tries to get away with whatever she can. So
my dogs know too. I totally get it.
Yeah. So Kelly came about really, really organically. It's like one of the most journal to songs we've ever made. It was literally just a very candid experience that I was going through, and we were in the studio. And again, when am I ever not just like heartbroken over somebody in the studio? Let me know. Never happens. So I was like really upset over the situation I was going through with this person I was trying to see, and it was just like I was getting so many mixed messages, and I never knew where we stood, and it was like really distracting me from like what, you know, my daily life and my work. And so we just put it in a song, and it came about in like 30 minutes. And then, you know, the choice as far as to use pronouns, it kind of you know, talking about this record in general and how there's a lot of pronoun usage on it, it was not really like a conscious decision to do so. I feel like it very naturally started happening because we were older, we had more experience in relationships, we were very much out and comfortable with our identities at that point, you know, Alisa and I writing lyrics in the music, and wanting to just share the stories of our lives. And then, you know, once we had all these demos, it was kind of that moment where I was like, oh, and I think our mom, you know, because she's from an older generation, she grew up religious, she was kind of like, have you guys thought about this? Like, you know,
she was like, I noticed you guys are using a lot of pronouns now in these demos. Is that what you're gonna do? Are you gonna like do that? Are you gonna keep it? Are you gonna try to take it out? And we were just like, the thought of even like trying to take it out was so dumb that we were just like, no, like these are just the songs. These are real stories.
Like we could never
take it out.
At that point, we would be censoring ourselves. At that point, we would be being untruthful because the music came out from such like a real place, you know? And so Alisa and I kind of were like, oh, that is interesting. You know, on our last record, we didn't use pronouns. And that was something that was like kind of a talking point. But this record, you know, it was just like, that's just the progression of who we are as people, who we are as artists. And yeah, of course we're going to use pronouns because these are the stories of our lives and this is the music we're making.
No, it's such a good track. I want to wrap up with you guys. I feel like I could go every track one by one because I love them. But like, you know, since we're in Pride Month, maybe I'll go to Katy. You know, I think Pride is a time to, you know, really embrace our queer youth and to, you know, remind them that they're going to be okay. What did any words of advice or wisdom or support, you know, do you have out there? Because we do have a lot of youth that are, you know, fans of yours that'll be watching this.
I think it's really important for fans to know that they always have a safe space with the Aces. If you come to our shows, if you're listening to our music, it's always going to be a safe place for you to be authentically yourself. And I think that's a message that we're really proud of. And like, we're all so different, but we can all be a family. And Pride Month, it's like so special. I don't think I've really learned this until I've gotten older, but there's like a power in it and such a unity in it. And I'm so like grateful to be a part of it and a part of a band that's, you know, so proud of being partially queer. And I think we just want our fans to know that and that we love them. And yeah.
I love that. Anyone else want to add into that?
I would say, I think Pride is so, I've been thinking about Pride a lot, you know, obviously this year, particularly in putting out a song that's like very openly queer during this time as well. And I think what's so special about Pride is like, you know, as like a young girl growing up, I think I always just thought that my sexuality was going to be something that I would just like tolerate. You know what I mean? Like it was just going to be this thing that like, okay, maybe I can get to a place where like I don't feel so, you know, ashamed or whatever of this part of me. But Pride teaches you to like celebrate that part of you, that this is like something that's amazing about you, that it's unique about you, that's beautiful about you, that that's the way you love and that's the way you get to experience like some of like life's most joyful moments is by like being who you are and like loving how you love. And I think that the power in celebrating it, not just accepting it, but like being excited about that part of yourself is when things, for me at least, like totally changed. You know, like when I started to get excited about the fact that I was queer and like so proud of the fact that I was queer, like my life just got so colorful and so beautiful. And I think that that's what I love about Pride and about this like celebration.
I love that. McKenna, also allyship. We know we need our allies. We need, you know, what is you know, what is it meant for you? You know, what have you learned about queer identities, I guess, you know, by being in this band and kind of just, you know, obviously growing up in a more conservative area, like what, you know, what have you learned, I guess?
I feel so grateful to have been able to be so close to these girls and to like really see their experience firsthand. Like a lot of people, especially in Utah, get the opportunity. Like I've learned so much from them about what Pride even is. Like I had so many different misconceptions about what Pride was just from like media and like things that I like heard. And so I've loved being able to like see their experiences firsthand, see how passionate they are and really come to understand Pride. And I feel like I'm just so proud to be in this band and proud to, you know, be able to kind of be there and like let their voices be heard. I think there is so much work that needs to be done, especially I feel really passionate as being in LA, and I think it's important, especially where we live, for people to understand how important that is, even though it's not your problem, or like you're not dealing with it like firsthand. It's still our problem. And I think there, with any minority, you see that, especially like with this Black Lives Matter movement, like it's important for all of us to get involved and to support each other and lift each other up. And so yeah, we need more allies. We need to be a family. We need to unite.
Yes, we absolutely need to unite. Well, everyone, it's been a pleasure. So great to talk to you. Everyone out there, reminder that the Aces new album, Under My Influence, will be out July 17th. I can tell you it's amazing, and we need more women in rock. So I'm so happy to go check out the album, and I hope to see you guys at a live show at some point soon.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.